Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and let's figure out who is the anchor being of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's 616 universe. Deadpool and Wolverine introduced the concept of anchor beings, individuals whose deaths trigger the decay of the universe they live in. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is the anchor being of Universe 10005, the Fox X-Men universe, but that leaves the primary universe of the MCU, the Sacred Timeline, 616, a bit of a mystery. But after closely examining all the usual suspects being floated around, there is one staring us right in the face that I think it has to be. And you know what? I think I'll tell you who it is. The best way to support New Rockstars is to grab one of our shirts from Nerd.shop. Like this awesome Choose Your Fighter shirt that I've worn so much I've forgotten to wash it, and you know, I don't know how it smells. Okay, in the film Deadpool and Wolverine, Paradox of the TVA explains the concept of anchor beings to Deadpool to describe why Deadpool's universe is dying. He says, "This is your universe, Mr. Wilson. That is what happens when a universe loses its anchor being. See how it decays from the inside? That is how a reality dies." And Deadpool asks, "What is an anchor being?" And Paradox responds, "An anchor being is an entity of such vital importance that when they die, their whole world withers out of existence." And by withers out of existence, he means spaghetti. Paradox says Wolverine is the anchor being of Universe 10005. Wolverine dies in the events of the Logan film near the Canadian border, and he says that this decay normally takes a few thousand years after the anchor being's death, but Paradox is impatient, and that's why he tries to use his Time Ripper. But Paradox never goes into further detail about what vital importance means. But in the context of the Deadpool and Wolverine film, we could say it's somewhat of a meta statement about the star power that Hugh Jackman brought to the films of that era. Like if the 20th Century Fox logo is getting pruned to the void, I think this film as a whole is making a statement about how the Fox films just kind of declined in popularity after Hugh Jackman left. And so it's easy to look at Hugh Jackman's Wolverine as the front man of the Fox X-Men films and then try to compare that to who would occupy that role for the MCU. So let's start with our genius billionaire playboy philanthropist. Suspect number one, Tony Stark. Is he the anchor being of the MCU? Well, Tony Stark is the character we started the MCU with. He has made the most appearances in MCU films through the Infinity Saga, and even in films that he's not in, the drama often comes from things he did. Like it was Tony's actions in Avengers 2012 that put Earth in Thanos' crosshairs, so that when Tony and Thanos run into each other in Infinity War, we get this interesting exchange.
Stark.
You know me?
I do. You're not the only one cursed with knowledge.
My only curse is you.
It was Tony's paranoia to put a suit of armor around the world that gave us Ultron. It was Tony's repulsor tech given to S.H.I.E.L.D. that nearly enabled Hydra to kill everyone with Project Insight and Captain America Winter Soldier. It was Tony who invented the Edith/Barf technology that became such a big deal in Spider-Man Far From Home. And Tony Stark's drones keep coming back. Tony brought Peter Parker into the Avengers. Tony built Bruce Banner's Gamma Lab in Mexico to help him find a balance with his Hulk identity. It's Tony who decodes the secrets of time travel. And he is the one who eventually kills Thanos and saves this reality. And then after he died in Endgame, from a meta point of view, the MCU has, in the eyes of many, struggled with how exactly to proceed. It does kind of feel like this universe is just struggling in his absence. Now, Kevin Feige was actually asked by our colleague Brandon Davis if Iron Man was the anchor being of the MCU.
Sorry, is Iron Man the anchor being of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which anchor being is a concept introduced in Deadpool and Wolverine?
The fact that you even asked that makes me very happy. And that term has ignited your imagination.
The delight on Kevin Feige's face that we are starting to even think about it definitely feels like a sign that Iron Man could be the anchor. Really, no other character has loomed quite as large. Even in the first season of What If on the animated side of things, many of the episodes pivoted around what if Tony Stark died? So much so that his death started to feel like an absolute point. But I think we have to realize that in the MCU, anchor beings are a new concept, and they apply more to the multiverse saga after Endgame than they do to the history of the Infinity Saga. I'm not sure if Kevin Feige would want to call Tony Stark the anchor being of 616, because you could say he might be implying that everything since Endgame has been part of a death spiral. And I think Kevin Feige is just too proud of too many of these titles after Endgame to admit that. So let's consider another suspect, an anchor who really began to flourish during the post-Endgame years, Wanda Maximoff. Suspect number two, is Wanda Maximoff the anchor being of the 616 universe? Well, I know for certain lovers of WandaVision, there is no doubt in their minds that the Scarlet Witch must be the MCU's anchor being. WandaVision and Fantastic Four director Matt Shakman said this at San Diego Comic-Con.
Who do you think is the anchor being of 616?
You know, I'd have to say for 616, I'd have to say the Scarlet Witch. You know, my girl Wanda Maximoff.
As as the destined Scarlet Witch foretold in the Darkhold, and the character Kevin Feige said came the closest to beating Thanos in Avengers Endgame without needing the Infinity Stones, the grieving mother who brought the multiverse to its knees in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Yes, it is quite possible that Wanda could be established as the mother anchor of the MCU. Some thought she died in Multiverse of Madness when the Darkhold Temple collapsed on her, but there was a red flash in that rebel, and various quotes from Elizabeth Olsen and Kevin Feige have suggested that Wanda could still be out there somewhere. And now in Deadpool and Wolverine, in the void was the statue of the Scarlet Witch from that temple, which many of us are now using to speculate that our mother, Wanda, could have gone into that void and could still be around somewhere. Wanda's absence at the end of Multiverse of Madness led to the post-credit scene where Doctor Strange and Clea have to go deal with some incursion-related crisis, and now Wanda's lingering magic over Agatha Harkness will be explored in Agatha All Along. So Wanda's effect on this universe remains. Really, the arguments against Wanda would include the fact that the MCU did, for many years, exist without her. Many just do not see her as a front person of the franchise the way other characters are. Just a reminder to all you Wanda heads out there that not all Marvel fans live and breathe WandaVision as much as they should. So perhaps a stronger argument could be made for Doctor Strange. Suspect 3, is Stephen Strange the anchor being of the MCU? While Doctor Strange did not join the MCU until 2016's Doctor Strange film, he was name dropped all the way back in 2014's Captain America Winter Soldier.
What targets?
You, Bruce Banner, Stephen Strange, anyone who's a threat.
And even long before that, in another universe, before the MCU, in Sam Raimi's 2004 Spider-Man 2.
What are we gonna call this guy?
Dr. Octopus.
That's crap.
Doctor Strange.
That's pretty good. But it's taken.
And in Avengers Endgame, when the Avengers go back in time to the Battle of New York in 2012, the Ancient One already knew about Strange's future.
I'm looking for Doctor Strange.
You're about 5 years too early. Stephen Strange is currently performing surgery about 20 blocks that way.
Maybe he made a mistake.
Or I did. Strange is meant to be the best of us.
The best of us. It was never clearly defined what exactly she meant by that. Could she have been saying that she knew Doctor Strange was the anchor being? Because it would be one thing to say that he was destined to become Sorcerer Supreme, but even by the time of Spider-Man No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, he is not even Sorcerer Supreme. So what greater role could she have been referring to? In Avengers Infinity War, Doctor Strange uses the Time Stone to look ahead at 14,605 different outcomes, and he saw only one that led to victory. We never knew for sure what exactly Doctor Strange saw, but based on his holding one finger to signal Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame, we have to assume that part of what he saw included Tony Stark's sacrificial death. But maybe Strange also saw beyond that into a future where, if he ever died, he would bring his whole universe down with it. Multiverse of Madness also makes a case for Strange being an entity of vital importance, as his variant in the 838 universe was who dreamwalked using the Darkhold to defeat Thanos in that universe, but in doing so, created an incursion that killed billions. 838 Reed Richards even warns.
From our experience, the greatest danger to the multiverse, it turns out, is Doctor Strange.
While they were referring to their other Strange, they seem to have just a fear of all Stranges. And in fact, the first time we heard 616 said in the MCU, it was when this Baxter Foundation labeled him as such. And as the movie that first introduced the term incursions to the MCU, really Multiverse of Madness was the first steps into the multiverse saga. And perhaps smoking gun, Kevin Feige actually used the term anchor to describe Doctor Strange in the past.
And you've always seen the tremendous potential in this character, and because of that, you become the anchor of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the only actor capable of guiding us through the madness of the multiverse.
So Doctor Strange seems like a pretty good candidate, but some online are speculating that Peter Parker could be the anchor being of the MCU. Obviously, Tom Holland is a huge star in the cinematic universe, but if he's the anchor of anything, don't you think it would be Sony's side of the universe? Because technically, he's not a character Kevin Feige has complete control over. Deadpool and Wolverine, though, took a big step in canonizing Peter Parker's actual first sighting in the MCU back in Iron Man 2, as the kid wearing the Hasbro toy mask at the Stark Expo in Queens. In the office where we saw Happy Hogan, which actually I think is Tony Stark's office, we see that he keeps that toy mask in front of the photo of Tony with Peter that we saw in Avengers Endgame, the photo that they took with the phony Stark internship certificate as a cover story for Peter working with Tony starting in Civil War. Before, that kid at the expo being Peter Parker was just something that Tom Holland and Kevin Feige said in interviews, and now it is something that is true in the universe of the films as well. Now, our next suspect, Loki, seems to be of such vital importance, at least the variant in the Loki series, as if the God of Stories were to ever die, die, that literally would be the end of the multiverse. Because who else is gonna hold everything together? But as the god of stories, he does not really exist within any timeline, and the MCU explored this fascinating new life path for the character through his variant in the Loki series that it just kind of seems like it would be odd to revisit the Loki who died in Infinity War and suggest that that was the more important Loki. Now, one curveball suspect is Deadpool. Yes, he is from Universe 10005, and he is still there at the end of Deadpool and Wolverine. How could he matter to the 616 MCU that much? I only bring him up as a suspect because of that really weird moment where Deadpool sees on Paradox's screen a future version of himself dying in Thor's arms. And recently, Ryan Reynolds teased on social media that he knows why Thor is crying and he cannot unknow it, suggesting that the answer to that question is gonna be important. And maybe Deadpool has a very important role to play in the MCU. But I think a key detail that we are missing about anchor beings is that their deaths do not immediately cause spaghettification and incursions. It takes, according to Paradox, a few thousand years. So for that decay to be starting now, at least soon enough for it to kick in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, it would mean that the 616 anchor being's death would have had to have occurred several thousands of years in the past. So could we be looking at an eternal, or maybe a celestial, or a time traveler? While I think all the options we've listed make certain degrees of sense as the MCU's anchor being, the smartest suspect for the upcoming narrative Marvel Studios wants to unfold on their way to Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars would be Kang. Whether it's Victor Timely, or He Who Remains, or still unseen Kang Prime, as someone so removed from time due to his constant looping back upon the events of the sacred timeline, his death could give the MCU the few thousands of years it needs to begin that decay. He could be such a glitch of a character, so wrapped up in coils of time that his death starts unspooling the universe right away. That decay might be what we are seeing outside of He Who Remains Citadel. Even before Sylvie stabbed He Who Remains, he heard a rumble of thunder and didn't know what would be coming next. Now, the Loki Season 2 finale suggested much of that could have been foreseen and orchestrated by He Who Remains, but if He Who Remains was the author of the sacred timeline, he could have rigged this timeline so that his death was a dead man's switch, taking this universe down with him. Look, I know the announcement of Avengers Doomsday replacing the title of Avengers Kang Dynasty, and the replacement of Loki writers like Jeff Loveness and Michael Waldron with the Russo's guy as Stephen McFeely. Many of us kind of worried that Marvel might just be scrapping all of its plans for Kang after the Jonathan Majors scandal, but I do not believe that's the case. We know now that Kang won't be the main villain, but he could just have a smaller role, yet still a crucial one to the plot. I think the right way to do this would be to recast Kang, and to establish that Kang as the anchor being of the MCU. It would make it so that everything we went through with Kang in the MCU still matters, both seasons of Loki and Quantumania, that these were not for nothing. Marvel could still do what they wanted for Kang and establish that he was there all along. In Egyptian art, to the original face of the Sphinx, but then they could just spaghettify the shit out of this guy and point to that as the reason of the MCU's doomed status, and in doing so, make a meta statement that Marvel might have put too much faith in an actor whose personal issues forced them to alter their plans. And again, I do think it would be best for Marvel to recast the role. But hey, could this be why Jonathan Majors was so reluctant to trash Marvel and reluctant to trash Robert Downey Jr. when TMZ was trying so hard to get him to do so, just in case Marvel might someday have a change of heart, maybe a year from now, to give him a cameo?
I think it's fair that Mr. Downey has been greeted with patience and curiosity and love, and that they're being allowed to work their art.
Would you want your old role back, like your old job back as Kang the Conqueror?
If that's what Marvel wants, let's roll.
So, Tony Stark, Wanda Maximoff, Stephen Strange, Peter Parker, Loki, Deadpool, or Kang, who do you think is the anchor being of the MCU? Comment down below with your thoughts. Follow me at EA Voss and subscribe to all 3 channels in the new Rockstars network. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.